All right, welcome everyone to another conversation here with members of San Diego Christian Entrepreneurs. Excited on this Saturday afternoon to have a conversation with my good friend Michael Zhao. Michael is a mortgage consultant with Cornerstone Mortgage Group, and he's actually going to be sharing with the group this coming meeting some things that God has put on his heart for us as Christian business people. And just really an opportunity for us to figure out how to let go and let God be leading us in our business, and just very excited about some of the things that he's been talking about, and wanted to just have this conversation first so everybody could get a chance to meet him. And so we're going to talk a little bit today. Michael, just a little bit about your past, if you could maybe just catch us up on what brought you to this point, and maybe a little bit about your family and background would be wonderful.
Sure, absolutely. I've been in the mortgage industry since 1996, but even before that, because nobody goes to college thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to go to college and enter into real estate, and I'm going to be a mortgage broker, and that was far from it. I actually wanted to be on Wall Street. Around 1994, I had just finished up an internship with, it was Robert F. Driver. I was a financial analyst assistant, and I had, at that point in time, finished kind of going through like a personal transition, and had literally a coming to Jesus moment. I hadn't saved since I was a young person as a sixth grader, and backslid a little bit, but really fell back into God's heart again when I was in college. And then when I did that, I started to have more service in the church at the time. I started service with the young people. Did that for about a year, a little bit over that. I served full time. And then when I was looking for a job, that was when I just got engaged to my wife, and the church said, hey, we'd like to support you, but you need to work. So I was looking for a job, and I was looking for a job in finance down here locally in San Diego, since I wasn't going to be working in Chicago or New York. And they would say, what have you been doing? Well, I've been preaching the gospel for the last year. And then, and next thing you know is the door is closed and I can't find a job.
Was it the business experience they were looking for?
Oh yeah, they were looking for business experience. Yeah, and actually, I'll get to this story in a little bit, but I canvassed literally the yellow pages by calling every finance company, mortgage company, and of course in the want ads as well. I couldn't find a job, so I got a job as a bill collector. And that was a tough gig. I was actually a pretty good bill collector for about 10 months. And after 10 months, one of my ex-bill collector colleagues calls me and says, hey, I got a job for you. I go, what is it? You get to be a loan officer. Oh, tell me about it. Well, you get to give money, and you get to call people and tell them that they qualify for loans when they didn't qualify before. Okay, well, and how much does it pay? Well, it pays like 3 times more than what you're getting paid now. Okay, well, sign me up.
Right.
Yeah, right. And so that was in the fall of 1996. So since 1996, I've been in the mortgage industry, funding and originating mortgage loans. And I've done virtually almost every type of mortgage transaction that the average person at least could imagine, whether it was residential and or commercial. So it's been a pretty fun path, and of course we've seen our ups and downs in the economy. But one of the things that I've done throughout my career, and this is especially when I started in the business, is I've established testimony, a Christian testimony, that people will know from the very, very beginning of what I stand for and who I stand for. And even in my career over the course of the last 20 years, there's been a lot of people that kind of question what I do, and as far as how I do things. But throughout whatever questions they might have for my professionalism, my faith, and the way I profess my faith, that's never been questioned.
That's huge. Yeah,
it is. And so they may profess that I don't know what I'm doing in some of the information that I have, and that's possible. And information can be skewed in many ways, but faith is never skewed. and in my devotion to God's work and God's will is not skewed.
Yeah.
So, and that's absolutely critical in our business, because when it comes to a business of money, faith and devotion to in the big picture of what God's will is for us, that is absolutely key when not only when earning trust, but also in having other people understand why you do what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
and that trust and that confidence in that industry, you're right, is so important. And even if people aren't from that same faith background, when they know beyond a doubt that you've got a bigger purpose behind anything that you're doing, it's gonna bring about a different level of comfort that you're going to be focused on doing what's best for them. So absolutely.
Absolutely. And it helps that I get into the Bible, into the Word, because it's not even just what we say. The Bible, if we get into the Bible, it's who we are, and it's not necessarily that we use the Bible against what people say, but we're really using the Bible as a word of life and an encouragement for other people, so that we'll be able to seek in the Bible words of life rather than trying to do something. We're getting into the purpose of our human existence and why we work, why we live, and why we earn a buck, so that we'll be able to serve the Lord and in the big picture of God's purpose for us.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're having conversations with people on what may be one of their biggest financial and emotional kinds of decisions in their life, and to realize that there's even bigger things going on that you can help to have conversations with them about as well, is a beautiful thing. So in addition, then, Michael, from people being able to know clearly where you stand in your faith and some of the character things that should come through from that, what are some other things that you would say you have done or focused on, or specifically identify in your business that kind of sets you apart? Because like financial planners, there's thousands of you around San Diego. So yeah.
Well, I've set a very good niche for myself in the mortgage industry as not only as someone who's very knowledgeable in the business, because a lot of people say they're really knowledgeable, but really set myself apart as understanding using the mortgages as a debt, as a vehicle to really move to the next level for financial planning purposes, because it's not comfortable for many people to have a lot of debt, and I get that. In fact, over 90% of the people that I'll talk to, I want to pay off my mortgage as soon as possible, and I understand that. But it's not just about paying off the mortgage, and it's really about using the mortgage as a vehicle so that you can just move on to the next point in your finances as an investment vehicle. The mortgage itself is an investment vehicle only because you're borrowing the money because you don't have the cash yet. But if we can just utilize that as more of an investment, as a bank giving us that trust to use that money for investment purposes, then it becomes a mindset change. And part of it, of course, is in the debt planning is budgeting, and knowing that every mortgage payment is not that you're giving money to the bank, but really just investing back into the equity of the home. Or you're investing into the potential tax write-off that you may have involved with it, or even fully knowing and utilizing a mortgage to buy your next investment property or your second home. In economics, which is what my degree is in, we talk about opportunity cost. Well, sometimes you'll invest into that in order to have emotional enjoyment. And now there's an affordability factor with that, and there's some people that push the limits of that, and I encourage them to not push the limit. But I can, it's like telling kids to not touch a hot pan, and sometimes they just do it because that's what they want to do. And so that, you just can't control that all the time. But I try and nudge them in a positive direction as far as using the mortgage as a proper financial tool as part of their budgeting process.
Okay.
And it is a long drawn out conversation, because it's not just about what is the lowest fee and the lowest cost, because cost and interest rates are related. And so if that's the case, then not every mortgage or the lowest rate is always the case. So I think it's prudent to say, what is the best situation for the homeowner, rather than what is the lowest rate, because in the mortgage banking industry, everybody literally has the lowest rate possible to them. The question is it best for that person or that consumer? Because there's different mortgage products as well that's available.
Yeah. So it really becomes a lot more consulting and really understanding the situation and what they're trying to accomplish, as opposed to just this rate shopping or trying, thinking that everything's going to fit every situation.
I would definitely call it creative financing. I consider myself a creative financing specialist. And Jeff, you and I, we just had this conversation actually yesterday on the telephone. You said someone called me a genius. Wow, what a compliment!
Right.
And I hear that, and I just know what's in my head. But and of course it's a compliment. But I'm a pretty bright guy when it comes to thinking outside of the box. So if someone doesn't know what to do, I can provide at least 3 to 4 different types of examples for their financing, and have them make an educated decision on all of them. Not just about what is the lowest interest rate is let's really talk about your overall financial plan, because if the average person actually only lives in their home 4 to 7 years, does a 30-year fixed rate really make sense? I don't know the answer to that question for every person, but I do know that sometimes if you can save an extra, let's say $100 to $200 a month, then let's look at an adjustable rate mortgage that doesn't adjust for 10 years, because you're going to move in 7 years anyway. Why? Because you have a newborn and you're living in a 2-bedroom condo and you plan on selling it to buy your next up-leg house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to be able to have the tools, to be able to have the knowledge of the different specifications of each option, and what's going to be the positives and negatives, or or at least things to be aware of in each different situation, really helps you to get to a place that helps people and to make the right decision. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an important thing.
Absolutely. And even when it comes to making the actual real estate buying decision, I've counseled a number of buyers on different types of financing programs that are out there, whether it was assistance from the city or the county, or even having sellers even contribute to the benefit of the buyer.
Right.
Only because it's going to benefit the seller to potentially to help the buyer out.
Yeah.
And there's
kind of be option C, D, E, as opposed to just having a couple of different things in mind that most people would typically be only thinking about. Right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I took the equivalent of six accounting classes before I got my economics degree, and it wasn't part of the economics major. And so and one of those classes was financial accounting. And it wasn't a fun class, but it was definitely well worth it. And to the extent of, I mean, I could understand 1040s, 1120s, K1s, whatever it would take. And not that I would give accounting advice, but I can always tell my clients, you should talk to your accountant about potentially doing something to benefit you for the mortgage loan as well as your own tax savings in general.
Yeah.
And I think it really sets me apart from that type of financial knowledge, to have an understanding of finance, because I can actually read those things when a self-employed business owner comes and says, hey, I'm self-employed and in the past I couldn't get a mortgage loan. What do I do? Well, then I counsel them and tell them what they may or may not qualify for, and say, this is what I think you should do.
Right. That's great. Yeah. I mean, it's always, a lot of conversations I've had with real estate agents and things over the years, I just say it's, hey, I know you're focused on the real estate side, but to understand some on the financial planning side, to understand some on the tax side is just so valuable and going to make you a more well-rounded agent or loan officer. And
absolutely.
That's great. Cool. Well, Michael, as you are, because I know that you're very good at what you do, and I know that the mortgage is a big part of who you are and what you're doing and how you're able to help people. But I know a lot of that is really tied into the rest of your vision and things that God has put on your heart for for using that as a vehicle towards. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what you see your vision in the next year, but also for further beyond that. And
well, the reason I work with a lot of buyers when it comes to their financial dream is in the big picture. The goal really is God's goal, and that's to serve God on in a full-time basis in some kind of ministry.
Yeah.
Whether it's in preaching the gospel to young people, preaching to the gospel on the college campuses, or just going out and speaking God's word. And of course, that's something that I already am doing in the workplace, talking to people because of my expression of how I express people in my faith already. Yeah. But if I can do that using my own personal experience to other young people, either teenagers or college age, then and this is not something that I want to say is a gift, but I just think that God has really called me to speak to young people right now. Maybe it's because I have my own kids and I happen to think that I can relate to them or they like me.
Yeah.
Maybe that demographic will get older, but at least for the time being, in the big picture, I'd love to serve in youth ministry, and in the mortgage industry, and in my endeavors as a real estate investor. It's really just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle for me to as I'm earning more money and as I acquire investments. It's just a vehicle so I can serve full time. And it's actually brought me to a different level of understanding when it comes to work. It really brings me, I've come across some challenging issues in talking to certain clients of mine, and instead of me just trying to avoid a circumstance, I've come to realize that as long as God's vision within me is you just need to complete the transaction. If you happen to earn money from it, then you're just going to be serving my purpose, and you're closer to my vision, Michael, so that you'll be able to serve me in the future. Yeah. And so I've got some visions to acquire some investment property so I can have some investment income, and even maybe own a number of mortgages myself, which a lot of people, they don't really understand that. But of course, I'd be happy to explain that to them on how they could do that, because I think a lot of people could do it. They just didn't know they could.
Right.
and I think that, I think once I begin to explain how people could do that, then they might be able to have a better understanding of how they can create some wealth for themselves, at least in that arena.
And it just needs to be some big bank somewhere, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, like I look at if you bought a home in 2011, for example, so you bought a home in Mira Mesa, a $300,000 home in Mira Mesa in 2011. That same home now is about $525,000. And if let's say back then they had $75,000 in IRA savings or 401k savings, and now let's say it's 125, which is pretty good growth still. Well, their $300,000 investment into their home is now a $550,000 or $500 to $550, depending upon where they live. Now they've got $200,000 of equity growth plus whatever principal they've paid down into it, which is double what they have into it. So if they were to sell, and I'm just using this as an example, but if they were to sell that home, carry back $100,000 out of equity, now they own a mortgage. And they might have taken the 100 and bought another home.
Yeah.
and in a perfect world, they got a raise and they bought another house, and now they have a mortgage earning 6%, 8%, whatever it would be. And they have $100,000 of down payment for their next home, and they still got their 125 in savings. I mean, and so they got $100,000 potentially more, and they got some passive income. And so, I mean, I'm just using that as an example. And that could have been someone that's like
step by step, growing
Yeah.
growing their wealth, growing their financial
And
situation.
it doesn't take a fancy finance person to figure that out. It's just like, oh, well, you could have done this, and they go, well, why would you want to carry paper, or why would a buyer, a future buyer, agree to that? Well, Mira Mesa is really a first time buyer market. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of someone getting an FHA loan, putting 3.5% down, and getting mortgage insurance, they can have a seller carry back a note and write off all of the interest instead of having no write off on the mortgage
Yeah.
insurance.
And
And
there
it's
now everyone
virtually the same payment.
And there now everyone can hear how Michael's brain works in trying to put these kinds of scenarios together and thinking outside the box and all of that. And yeah, that's a beautiful example right there.
Yeah. And my brain gets pretty creative. And anybody who's actually had any deep conversations with me as far as finance is concerned over the last year is really going to realize how deep I get into the creative financing part. That's just one example of tax benefit for everybody involved.
Yeah.
But I've used it in a number of scenarios in this past year to the benefit of a lot of people. So if you have any questions about how you can do that, just feel free to give me a phone call on my cell phone or send me a text. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we'll have we'll have all the contact info on there, and yeah, I mean, just we're so blessed, as members with the San Diego Christian Entrepreneurs to have you connected with what we're doing, having you be a part of the group, and I know as we're going forward, and just the opportunities that we have to work together to help solve issues that we're having, whether it's in our businesses or or in our own personal financial situations or other things that we're doing, that we're just going to have a lot of really good opportunities to help each other and to grow and really come together as a group. So part of the focus of these conversations is to say how can we then as a group come and help support you, Michael, in your vision and in what you're doing going forward.
Well, I love an opportunity to talk to people who own a home right now to see if there's a possibility for them to buy their next move-up home, or show them refinancing options and how they can buy their next investment property,
Mm-hmm.
or not even refinance, just showing them how they can buy their next investment property. And if I have the ability to talk to homeowners or people who want to buy a home, then through those conversations, they can refer me to their realtor. And then I'll be able to educate their realtors on the type of business I do. And then through that, the realtors will provide me potentially with referrals as long as we can develop a business relationship.
Okay.
And so the best referral for me right now is a realtor that's open to listening to investment opportunities for their clients. And when I say investment opportunities, I'm not talking about just an investment property, but also an investment into their home, whether it's a move-up buyer or a first-time buyer, so that I'll be able to educate their clients on how they can utilize mortgage as part of their financial vehicle. Because through that, they'll also have conversations with their financial planners, like you, Jeff. Yeah, right?
Right.
Or with their accountants, or with their estate planning attorneys,
Yeah.
or life insurance agents, or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
just
yeah,
the whole
great thing.
gamut of
So
people who are in the
conversation.
financial.
Sorry, go ahead.
I know, I'm sorry, the internet's just a little unstable right now.
Okay. Yeah. So conversations with real estate agents, especially, who obviously their goal is going to be trying to help buyers and sellers be able to do those transactions. And if you can
Absolutely.
help them be more creative in how they can make situations work and those kinds of things on the financing side, whether for a personal or an investment kind of property, it certainly helps them. So
I can, if an average realtor, let's say they closed six real estate transactions last year, I can show them how to use the 6 transactions they closed 2 years ago and the 6 transactions they closed the year before, how they can turn that into additional 4 real estate transactions with the same client database, just by potentially repositioning the equity of those past buyers, and so that they can buy up their next move up home. or even a second home for that matter.
Okay.
And it's pretty powerful if I can show a realtor that's not only going to benefit their own client, but also the realtor in producing more size, because it's a win-win for everybody.
It sounds like it. And win-wins are what we're trying to get to for everybody here. So
absolutely.
Good. Michael, man, I really appreciated the conversation. Good
Thank
to
you.
be able to get this on video so we can all come back. And if you need to remember exactly what all Michael does, then you can watch this as many times as you want. So
that'd be awesome.
Anything else that you wanted to say quickly in closing?
No, I appreciate the time that you took on this Saturday afternoon to reach out to me. And if anybody wants a time, if they're having a necessity to want to pray in the middle of the day, or even get into the Bible, and because they want a partner to do that, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Just feel free to reach out to me via text. And I'd be happy to, the Bible is readily open on the internet if you don't have it available to you. So if we could just wash each other in the Word. So if you want to get into the Bible, that's really something. If we can minister to each other, I would appreciate that for me. Yeah. And if you would appreciate that, then feel free to do that.
That's beautiful, beautiful. It's a great invitation, and one to definitely take advantage of. And
it's a great time for us to get to know each other too in business.
Yeah. Man, Michael, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, and look forward to hearing from you on Monday.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Yep. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks. Okay.